Hello everyone. Today we focus on new topic. That is the only topic for the online lecture. But I'm going to prepare a preparation lectures also, so don't worry about it. Okay. In previous weeks, we focus on production and unemployment or employment side. Today we focus on the third main indicators of the macroeconomy, that is inflation. Let's start it. Let's start with a little definition, not real one, but that show everything about the inflation. Let's start with the definition of inflation, but before that, I get the laser pointer. Inflation showed a general increase in prices of goods and services over the time. So inflation does not mean that a good price increases. Rather, it shows overall price increases, okay? What about the deflation part? A general decrease in prices of the goods and services over the time. So if we see overall decreases, that's called deflation. When we see overall increase in the price level, that is called inflation. Inflation is an essential concept for our life because when overall price changes, decrease or increase, it's affect our life standards. It's effect of product life cycle. That's why that is a real important variable for the macroeconomic conditions and in the economy. Okay, we don't know the variables or results of the inflation for the end of this year, but some groups make forecasting about the inflation rate. Let's look at that graph that show the forecast of the inflation rate all over the world. Let's check the first one, Venezuela, then Zimbabwe, then Sudan, Argentina. After that, you see over there, Turkey, 54.3. And you see the first 25 inflation rate in the world. Let's check Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Sudan, Argentina, Egypt, Angola, Iran, Burundi. It's going like that. Most of them looks like a poor country. So by understanding why there is a problem on inflation side, maybe it's mostly come from the production sides. So how can we cope or how can we become degrees of the inflation rates? Central bank use some policies, but that is not the only policy. We have a role for decreasing inflation by making saving, but I'm going to tell more things about the solution of inflation in other weeks. Today, we just only understand what is the definition of inflation, how can we calculate the inflation. It's like that. Then we focus on the social phenomena of the inflation. I said, how can we calculate the inflation? In 3 ways for the calculation of inflation. You know about the previous weeks by using the GDP deflator to get inflation rate. The second one is CPI, Consumer Price Index, and PPI, Producer Price Index. So the first one is deflator, then consumer side, consumer price index, and producer side, producer price index. And TÜİK called not producer price index, domestic producer price index. We will look at other slides. Okay, let's start with the consumer price index. I give some information about it, but I'm not gonna ask the detail about it. About the details. I said the first is consumer price index. It's come from the consumer. Let's look the definition. CPI measures the change over the time in overall level of price for goods and services subject to consumption expenditure. And it's targets to the measure the inflation. Okay? They try to understand consumer and relate it with their expenditures of the consumers. So let's focus on the mostly consumption expenditures. By the calculation of CPI or Consumer Price Index, they get a value of a 1 year. TÜİK, Turkish Statistical Institute, take 100 for the 2003, calculated in Turkey Change Index, and they prepare a basket. They put some goods and services over there. Then they use some methodology for the calculation of CPI as an indicator of inflation on the consumer side. How many goods can put into the basket? 406 items include that baskets or index. And I said they use some essential methodology for calculating the CPI, but we just look at the basic part for calculating inflation. And by preparing that basket, they use 12 main groups we are going to check. And as I said before, 406 items they put into the basket. And TÜİK or Turkish Statistical Institute get data from the people or firms. They get that amount of prices from that households, outlets, and they get their data from all over the Turkey or Turkey. Okay? It's not an easy thing. I said in the CPI part, there are 12 main groups you see over there. Let's check food and non-alcoholic beverage. The second, alcoholic beverage and tobacco, clothing and footwear, housing, furnishing, health, transportation, communication, recreation and culture, education, hotels, cafes and restaurants, and others, goods and services. That part shows the weights of the groups. We can see over there the changes over the year. For example, food and non-alcoholic beverage, it's fluctuate over there, but it's nearly 25%. What about the house parts? 14. What about the education? 1.8. Hotels, 8. It's going to like that. And I said for this year, they use the amount of 406 units in the basket for the calculation of CPI. You see it's changed all over the year. Okay. Let's look the last announcement of Turkish Statistical Institute for the CPI. You see February 2024, 67 point percentage for in general. You see over there also. What about the lowest one for the February? Clothing and footwear, 43. What about the highest one? Hotels and restaurants, 94. It's too high. Also 43, it's too high. Normally, we expect that the normal inflation 5 or 6. I have a question over there. What about the negative inflation, deflation? Is it a good thing or bad thing? When price go down, it's a good thing for our consumer. But let's think about the producer side. When the price fall down, they don't want to produce more. So that's not a good thing for the producer process. So small or little amount of the inflation is a good thing, nearly 5 or 6%. But you see in the Turkey, it's still too high. Maybe in over there it's more than 67, but still too high. And that's a real problem. How can we calculate CPI? Let's remember the real GDP. In the real GDP calculation, we are fixing the price. Okay? You know how can we calculate it. And when we talk about the CPI, Consumer Price Index, I said we have a bucket or basket over there. We put some goods and services, and we are fixing the year of 1 year. Then we understand the price changes of that basket over the year. So in calculation of real GDP, we are fixing the price. What about the CPI? We are fixing the bucket or basket. Okay. Let's look at, okay, it still look like the calculation of real GDP or nominal GDP. But this time, for calculating CPI, we are fixing not price. We are fixing the quantity. Quantity of base year. When we return to the definition of tweak, let's look. They get the base year 2003. Okay? They fixing the price at that year of the basket. Okay, let's look at that example by understanding easily. There are 3 final goods, I check, pizza, and book for that country. They give the 3 years, 2003, 2023, and 2024. And they give the price and quantity for each year. And they ask the expenditure for calculating CPI. I said by calculating CPI, we are fixing the quantity for calculating every year expenditure. We are fixing the quantity. By calculating expenditure of 2023, I get the price of 2023 and I get the base year quantity. And base year quantity is the same. So 50 multiply 1, 50, 10 multiply 20, 200, and 25 multiply 20, 500. When we get summation of all these 3, we get 750. Okay? Then turn to the 2023. I said we get the base year quantity. that is the same. So we cannot use that one for 2023. And also we cannot use 2024 the quantity because we get the base year quantity, okay? So for the expenditure of, take the base year of 2003, we get the what year I asked to you, 2023 price multiply 1. So 100, 15 multiply 20. Okay, I also show pen. 100 multiply 1, 15 multiply 20, and 25 multiply 20. Okay, when we get summation of all these three numbers, we get 900. And do it for the 2024. We get for the price for 2024, and we get the quantity for the base year. Okay, so 85 multiply 1, 14 multiply 20, 27.5 multiply 20, and we get the 950. So we calculate the expenditure of 3 years by getting the base year quantity. We are fixing the quantity. Because in the calculation of CPI, we are fixing the quantity. We get the same quality or quantity of the base year for the other years. Okay, let's look at more detail. Note that the amount of product purchased 2023 and 2024 does not matter of in the CPI calculation because we assume that household purchased the market basket quantities of product determined in the base year. That's why we delete that part because in the calculation of CPI, we are focused on the quantity of the base year. Okay. For the calculation of CPI for the formula, we use that amount. We calculate the 2-year for the CPI. For example, that's the expenditure for the what year I asked to you, divided expenditure for the base year. So when I ask CPI for 2023, that part, we get the what year I asked to you, divided the base year expenditure, okay? 90 divided 750 and multiply 100. That is the 120. What about the 2024? This time we get the expenditure of 2024 by using the base year quantity. 915 divided base year expenditure. 750 multiply 100, and that is the 122. Then we can calculate by using CPI as a method of percentage change. It's look like the growth rate. In growth rate, we use the real GDP. By calculation inflation with CPI, we use the percentage change by using the CPI. Also in previous week, we used the GDP deflator for calculating inflation. For example, they ask inflation for inflation rate. I'm going to add over there. 2024. Firstly, we get the CPI of what year I asked to you, 2024, minus 1 year earlier, divided 1 year earlier. Okay, so 122 minus 120 divided 120, multiply 100. So by using the CPI, inflation rate is 1.7. Okay, let's do another example, calculating CPI. This time, we have three final goods. Three final goods: camera, lamp, and pen. This time, base year is 2023. They ask 2022 and 23. So the question is, what is the inflation rate for 2023 by using CPI? I said in CPI, we fixing the quantity of the base year, then calculate the expenditure by using the quantity of the base year. So let's start. 300 multiply 20, 25 multiply 40, and 30 multiply 40. Then get the calculation or summation of, not calculation, sorry. Get the summation of these three values. So in the base year expenditure is 8,200. What about the 2022? I said in the calculation of CPI, we are delete the quantity because we get the quantity of the base year. We don't use quantity of what year I asked you. We use the base year quantity. So 200 multiply 20, 30 multiply 40, 50 multiply 40, then get the summation of these three values, 7,200. Let's look at that parts also. 120 multiply 20, sorry, 170 multiply 20, 35 multiply 40, 55 multiply 40, and get the summation of the expenditure in base year amount, 7,000. Then what can I say? We calculate the CPI for 2 years. For example, CPI 2022, that is the 7,200 divided base year expenditure, that amount, 8,200 multiply 100. Then find the CPI of 2022, 87.8. Then CPI of 2023, that is the expenditure in base year amount, 7,000 divided 8,200 multiply 100. So we find that amount. Then we easily calculate the inflation for 2023. I said, firstly, we take the what year I asked to you. We ask 2023 minus 1 year earlier divided 1 year earlier. I forget over there. Then this is the inflation rate. We put 100 over here. I also add over here. Okay. Don't forget to put 100. So the answer is negative. So this is the deflation, not inflation. Let's turn to the previous example. Also put 100 in previous question. Sorry for that. But I put formula over here, so don't worry about it. Okay, that is the calculation of CPI. That's the important question. I said we have three ways for calculating inflation. The first one is CPI, Consumer Price Index, GDP deflator, and the last one is normally Producer Price Index, but in Turkey we use Domestic Producer Price Index. That show the producer side, supply side. Let's look at the definition. Domestic Producer Price Index is a measure of the change in the prices of goods and services sold as output by domestic producers in a given period. in a given reference period. Also, they get their data from surveys. These surveys are annual industrial product statistics, industrial production data, and turnover statistics, and GNP, gross national product data. What they show, when we look at the producer price index or domestic producer price index, we understand that this mostly show the, how can I say, cost of the producer. If domestic producer price index go up, we think that the producer costs become higher. So they turn into they are going to change the price. They are increase the price. So when the domestic producer price index go up, we expect that they turn into the increasing price levels. So when domestic producer price index become higher, in other periods, the CPI consumer price index become higher. And also the real definition, the domestic producer price index measure the prices that producer faces at every stage of the production process. Okay? That show the cost of production mostly. Okay, that is the last announcement of TÜİK, Turkish Statistical Institute, for the domestic producer price index. When we look the fluctuations, it become lower, but still it's too high. But I said, when it's go down, we expect that CPI also follow that path, because the cost of producer become lower, maybe the price of goods become lower, and it's turned into the decrease in the CPI, Consumer Price Index. I'm not gonna ask the calculation of producer price index, but that is the important concept. So I wanna give about the mechanism details. And you know the GDP deflator part, but let's make an example. I said we use the GDP deflator for calculating inflation. That is the last one. And we have a formula for GDP deflator, nominal divided real, multiply 100. And we use the GDP deflator to calculate inflation. And don't forget to put 100 over there. Nominal GDP divided real GDP. And we get what year I asked to you. For example, when I ask GDP deflator 2023, we get the numbers of the 2023 for the nominal divided real and multiply 100. Okay. Then we find the GDP deflator 2023. What about the GDP deflator 2024? I asked 2024, so we get the number of nominal and real for the 2024, multiply 100. Then we find another answer. And we are able to use inflation rate by using that GDP deflator. Let's assume that I'm gonna ask GDP inflation rate for the 2024. This time we are not use the CPI, rather than we use the GDP deflator, same mechanism. GDP deflator, what year I asked to you? You see, I asked 2024 minus 1 year earlier, 2023, divided 1 year earlier, multiply 100. Okay? It's really easy concept. 108.3 minus 106.7 divided 100.6, 106.7 multiply 100, and the answer is 1.5. Okay, thank you. And let's come to the last slide, last two slides. The Turkish Statistical Institute or Turkish Central Bank give CPI numbers in their data. And by using these are the real CPI data I get today. Let's make example. That's a really enjoyable example. That's why I put over there. And I'm not gonna say what can we do over there, but you can understand by looking at the example. Let's assume that in January 2028, your salary was equal to the minimum wage. And at that time, minimum wage is 1,603 Turkish lira. By using CPI, we are able to calculate for that amount for that year, what is the equal of, not January, I'm sorry about it, this is February. February of this year. Okay. Let's make easy to understand. Your wage in January 2028 is equal to that amount. What is equal of today or previous months? I'm not gonna get the March data of this year, so I use the February. We are able to get 1,000, I get the laser, sorry about it. 1,603 equal to today. We use the CPI for calculating. Let's check the CPI number. In CPI January 2018, that is equal to, you see over there, 330.75. What about today? February 2024, that is equal to 2,073.88. Okay. We are able to calculate salary of 1,063 in January 2018 in terms of purchasing power for the today. We use that formula. Value of today equal to value of January 2018 multiply January CPI for today. Sorry, this is not January. It's my fault, sorry about it. This is not January. This is February. I'm gonna change in model, sorry about it. I get also laser over there. And divided January CPI for the 2018. Okay. Can we know the value of January 2018? Yes. That amount, 1,603, sorry about it, divided, no, sorry, that is over there. That is my fault, sorry about it. I get the pencil over here. So that number put over there. And CPI for today put over here. No, I can, that's my wrong. I can delete that part. And also, sorry about it, I'm changed over here, then I turn to the question. Sorry about it. If I not change, I'm gonna make wrong over here. Take a 1 second. Okay. I changed the old part to the February to tell true. Okay, in the second question, there is no problem over there. Then I changed I open my share screen. Where is that? It's over there. Okay. Let's start again to understand easily. And I'm sorry for that, my fault. Yeah, let's take the laser. The question asks, for example, you get a wage in January 2018. For example, 1,000. What is equal to today? How can we calculate it? By using CPI index data. That index data come from the Turkish Statistical Institute and Turkish Central Bank, or your country's data. But I'm gonna show the Turkey. Okay, let's look at the question. In January 2018, 1,603. What that amount equal of today, February 2014? How can we calculate it? By using the CPI data. That CPI data we are going to check on the table. In 2018, that is equal to 330.75. What about today? 2073.88. And by calculating that amount of today's value, we use that formula. Firstly, we get the value of January 2018. Let's show. We get that get data. Then we get the CPI for the today, and we get the last part, January CPI for the 2018. Okay. So what can we find over here? I'm gonna delete that part and show easily. That amount of 2018 today equivalent to that amount, 10,000. Okay. It's nearly 9 times more in 6 years or 7 years. Okay, let's make another example understand easily. Let's assume that your salary in 2022 January, your payment or your salary is equal to the 12,000. Okay. What that amount is equal of today? By get that equivalent, we use the CPI of January 2022. That is equal to 763.23, and we get the CPI of today. Okay, so that's really easy. Let's do that example, then I tell a story or detail. Okay, we get the CPI of 2 terms. Then we are able to calculate what that amount is equal or equivalent to today. Firstly, we get the previous data. We try to find what that amount equal today? 12,000 multiply CPI of today divided CPI of previous terms. January CPI for 2022. Then we are able to calculate it. So let's get the laser over here. 12,000 Turkish lira for in January 2022 equal February, this is not 23, sorry, 24, equal to, look at it, 32,000 more. 32,606.89. Wow. So where can we use that CPI index? For example, you bought a house in 3 years ago or 4 years ago. What about thinking, what's that equivalent today for your house price? By looking at CPI, you're able to calculate your house price using the CPI, but mostly please do it on yourself. In the market, your sales price of house more than the calculation of CPI. So we understand from that there's a huge problem on the price mechanism of prices of houses or housing prices. Okay. Okay. Thanks for watching that video. I said that's for the only for this week. But I promise that I'm gonna make another videos for preparing your exams. And have a nice day. Bye bye.